I actually don't give a rat's ass what you're doing right now. You're gonna sit your little bum down, you're gonna grab yourself a bowl of chips or whatever you need to do to keep your mouth busy, because I'm about to explain to you why Anna Paul is one of the worst influencers of all time, why her brother is a danger to society and needs to be stopped, and ultimately this story is gonna get very triggering, so full warning. So if you're like me, there's a very good chance that you've never heard of these people before. I, for one, would just like to say I literally thought Anna Paul was Jake Paul's mom when I first heard of her. So that's just to show that I really don't have a dog in this fight, and my only goal in making this video is to try to explain for my audience what I now believe to be the truth after months of keeping up with this story, speaking to Mikaela and other victims involved with this, and really just trying to give my most honest understanding of what's happened. And I hope that by the end of the video, you guys will understand why this is really important and goes far beyond simply influencer drama. So Mikaela Testa is an Australian influencer who is in a 2-year-long relationship with another fellow influencer named Addis Paul. Now, Addis Paul is the younger brother of another mega influencer who I'm sure many of you know named Anna Paul. So Mikaela initially broke up with Addis Paul and stayed silent for years after, but then recently in January posted an expose where she discussed the fact that her relationship with Addis Paul was physically, emotionally, and financially abusive, and that abuse was perpetuated, supported by, and enabled by Anna Paul, as well as the, I would say, emotionally incestuous relationship that Anna and Addis had. And the reason why Mikaela has sort of discussed the entirety of the Paul family is because they lived together, and she really was in a toxic relationship with their entire family, not just Addis, although of course Addis is the main perpetrator of the most concerning allegations that have been made. Okay, so I know sometimes these stories can become very convoluted, so I created a detailed timeline for you guys that I will briefly take you through. So in 2018, the friendship between Mikaela and Anna began. Then in 2020 was when Mikaela and Addis officially started dating. But something happened in 2017 that we didn't know about, which is Addis engaged in unlawful sexual behavior with a minor, which he then pled guilty to in 2023 and was convicted of rape. I hate having to use that word, but we all know how TikTok likes to censor things. So in 2023, there was the breakup and the allegations. So Mikaela and Addis broke up after a volatile relationship, and Mikaela would then later accuse him of the financial and emotional and physical abuse. In 2023, we saw some feud foreshadowing as there were some public tensions that began to fester. So Mikaela had hinted at trouble with the Pauls online, and then there's also an influencer named Veruca Salt who also continued to amplify rumors that this entire family was effed in the head, basically. Later on in 2025 was the expose where Mikaela posted the details of what had happened. And then later on, many influencers backed up Mikaela, such as Jack Cooper and Kat Clark, who publicly supported her because Anna had bullied them and treated them horribly in private. Later on in 2025, Mikaela released her 2-part podcast series where she spoke in vivid detail of everything that had happened between both her, Anna, Addis, the entire family, where she included numerous receipts, which Anna Paul later said that Mikaela had not included receipts. That entire podcast was filled with receipts to substantiate the claims that Mikaela had made. Then later on in 2025, very briefly after, Anna and Addis responded, Anna responding in a 26-minute video on TikTok, and Addis responding in a series of photos on Instagram, which we will get into later. And then 2025, later on, still going on currently, like this week, Sarah Paul, who is the half-sister of both Anna and Addis Paul, has defended and sided with Mikaela. So I do also have to get into what Addis' side of the story is. So Addis obviously denies that anything happened between him and Mikaela that was not completely consensual. He does, however, admit to the financial abuse, where he justifies taking 50% of Mikaela's OF salary, which, by the way, is so beyond any industry standard. There is no manager on earth that takes more than 50% or even 30% of someone's salary. Would be completely insane. And he justifies it with screenshots showing that he used some of the money for promos. But if you zoom into many of the payments, you can see there's $400. I believe one is $1,400 is the maximum. So he's justifying taking $60,000 from her, and that's okay because he used $1,000 of it for a random promo. He then justifies the financial abuse further by including screenshots of Alibaba showing that he sourced bikini samples for her from Alibaba. So any of you that have ever been on Alibaba, is extremely easy to use and it's very cheap. $116, $120, $90. So in total, he spent like $400 buying her bikinis, and this is how he justified the financial abuse, which I think gives a lot of credence to the idea that this man is either a narcissist or a sociopath or both. So in terms of the more serious allegations of Addis Paul actually being a predator, there are several reasons why I do believe Mikaela along with all of the other victims. So number one, in Mikaela's podcast, she illustrates numerous examples of specific screenshots from the time that certain incidents happened between herself and her friends, herself and Anna, speaking about an incident, for example, that involved a knife that was absolutely terrifying to hear. Additionally, he is quite literally a convicted rapist. So he was found guilty in a court of law for engaging in unlawful sexual acts toward a young girl named Alice, who was underage at the time. And we also have a more recent girlfriend named Jamia, who has come public with her allegations as well and has shared some very disturbing screenshots of text messages between herself and Atis, which paints him in an absolutely horrible light. And I fully believe all of the allegations that this man is, quite honestly, a serial rapist. Now, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with Anna Paul, and why are we blaming the actions of a man on a woman? And while I can completely understand that sentiment, because it's a thought I had initially when I didn't fully understand all the details of the situation, the reason Anna Paul is guilty is because she has exhibited a historical pattern of publicly discrediting her brother's victims, and we now have text messages that prove she's aware of her brother's nefarious actions because she has repeatedly acknowledged it. And instead of distancing herself or standing up for the women that have been victimized by him, she has gone out of her way, even back years ago toward Alice, to destroy the lives of anybody who has publicly accused Addis of his crimes. So there are so many reasons why I don't think you guys should believe a word that comes out of Anna Paul's mouth. One of them being, if you look at her response video to Mikaela, she immediately recuses herself from discussing any private details that occurred between Addis and Mikaela, saying, "I can't speak to a relationship that I wasn't in." Meanwhile, if we look at the screenshots included in Mikaela's podcast, which is just another example of how Anna gaslit you in her video by saying Mikaela had no receipts, which is such a joke and such an insult to your intelligence. It's insane that any of you follow her. I'm sorry. We see that there is a specific traumatizing incident that occurred where Addis had practically lunged at Mikaela with a knife. Mikaela brings this up to Anna, and Anna acknowledges it and says, "Yes, it traumatized me. I can't even go in that room anymore or smell that room." So while Anna doesn't have to speak to private things that happen behind closed doors, she absolutely has an obligation to speak to the incidents that she directly observed and actively participated in. And instead is just saying, "I'm not going to discuss it." I think that is so dishonest. It is such a cop-out, and it is so insulting to all of us that she has just said, "I'm not going to discuss this," when she was very actively involved throughout the entirety of this relationship, and also had no problem discussing private details in a relationship when she was discrediting Alice, who is the first public victim of her rapist brother. I also want to draw attention to a manipulation tactic that Anna has used in both of her response videos called the straw man fallacy. So this is where you intentionally oversimplify or misrepresent your opponent's accusations against you, usually by choosing the most irrelevant or asinine points and then dismantling those publicly so you can easily knock it down. So for example, she's accused of enabling her brother's violent crimes against women, and then instead of acknowledging that, she picks the examples of the bird. She then throws distractions toward you, saying Mikaela had rehomed a cat, and then she's relying on the audience not watching the 5 hours worth of footage that Mikaela has filmed and only watching her video in isolation. And if you do that, you just simply walk away thinking this is stupid influencer drama when it's extremely serious. And her gaslighting reaches a fever pitch when she attempts to debunk the accusation that her brother takes her OF content with a screenshot that confirms her brother had taken her OF content. Anna and Addis Paul, you are officially guilty as charged. I sentence you to jail time. Maybe we can get them a cell together so they can finally fulfill their fantasies, and Addis will no longer be in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction, since we all know the only woman he really wants to be with is his sister.